Okay. Yeah, now I see you're recording.
All right.
Yeah, there it is.
What's up, Yuli? How are you, bro?
Hey, brother. How you doing?
Good to see you.
Likewise. Likewise.
Very good to see you. Thank you
Yeah,
for joining.
it's wonderful to see you too. No, thanks for having me.
Good.
Well,
yeah, really excited to have you on this wonderful show. Yeah, this is a beautiful project that birthed itself through the materialization and manifestation of Shandeep and I having a conversation, and it literally just happened like that, spontaneously, and we just said, let's go, and we've been going every week. It's been beautiful. Personally, for me, I've been learning so much about what even the title of the channel, Through the Fire, and what does it mean to me, and how I keep placing myself in these uncomfortable predicaments so I don't get burnt. and as I get burnt, how do I keep walking through it, and carry this innate flame and this constant willpower for life and transformation I'm excited about.
I just, to echo Pablo, I feel like this started as a, hey, let's create content for others and like give this avenue to people to see how people who've been through difficult situations in life and how they resolved it, finding internal resolve, changing themselves as individuals, growing, evolving. It started from that, but now it's so much more selfish because I'm just like, this is great. Every single week I get to ask questions about what I'm struggling with, and people just answer, and I'm like, okay, that's a very good viewpoint to go through, and it's just been beautiful. So thank you so much, and we're very excited to have you here, especially, you know, you're doing all this amazing work with your new company, and you know, I saw it on Product Hunt and I saw that advertising there, but you know, you've done so much work internally as well. So we'll go and ask a few questions about all avenues, but I think it would be great if Pablo gives a brief introduction. Pablo's generally been very amazing at that, so I've designated him as that individual, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, you know, it's interesting because I'm a sucker for disruption, and for this particular episode, I want to do something different. And just rather than me introducing Yuli and how amazing you are, just like dive right in, because every time I think of you, there's two words that come to my mind, and maybe more. And the first one is vulnerability, courage, and the third one would be surrender. And I've been blessed to experience this side by side with you, and allow this to be my process as well. And I want to dive into that just because this is such an amazing, powerful sharing that I got to experience. And just by me using these words, you're probably already getting an idea of where is it that I'm going. And I just remember one of the journeys, the plant medicine journeys with One Heart, and one of the exercises where it's a beautiful exercise. It's a very loving exercise that leads one to a pointing of self-love, self-worth, and value. Self-love is it. And you know, a lot of people have a misconception of what this looks like. You know, and when we do introductions, it instantly puts us and the viewers as like, okay, well, now that the intro's done, everything that's shared is going to match that intro. And it's like, fuck it, let's do something different, right? Even though this is still an intro.
Yeah.
And having shared that, it's easy for people in the language or the environment of self-development, or the ones curious, when we think about self-love and transformation, that it's almost like we immediately go to the end result of what that looks like. And we kind of miss the most important step, which is walking through the fire, like walking through the muck. Like, what does it take to get to that? Like, I feel good. Wow, you always look good. You look content. You look steady and easy. Well, there's a practice to that. There's some things that I've experienced and lived through to get through that. And I'm gonna just invite you to share with 2 words, and you can start wherever you like. Emotional maturity and dad.
Yeah, well, those are real good ones. First of all, let me just thank you guys for spending time talking, right? And just having this conversation. I think it's a wonderful idea. There's so much that we can all learn from one another, I guess I'll start with the one that kind of had the most visceral, that I had the most kind of reaction to, which was dad, right? I've had a very interesting kind of experience with that title and that concept and that role, as far as the way that it's kind of shaped my life. I've had a very interesting kind of journey with that role for the past 2 years, I think it's been. And through that journey, I realized that there is a lot, or there are a lot of us that have been marked by that relationship, in different ways, some in very positive ways, some in not so much. I come from the latter, right? I had a very tumultuous relationship with my dad, a very violent one that severely affected me as a youth, and in some ways strengthened me, right? Just kind of going through these experiences strengthened me, but at the same time, with that strength came a huge disconnect in the way that I was connecting with other people, right? I gained strength in order to kind of cope with the elements that were going on in my life, but I lost a little bit of my kind of ability to connect. And that had really rough implications for me as an adult when I started to, specifically around romantic relationships, right? As I started to try to connect with people in a romantic way, I couldn't demonstrate affection and love, and I couldn't understand or parse that love that was given to me.
You've shared, Yuli, in the past, and I'll invite you to share as much as you feel comfortable with, but there's a lot of stuff that you've dealt with that people may not understand what that means when you say you've had a tough relationship with your dad. Can you speak a little bit about the genesis and some of the things that you've been through to get to where you are?
Yeah, and it's funny because when you ask that, I feel at peace talking about that. Like, whereas 2 or 3 years ago, man, I would have been like, get out of my face. Like, don't, what's wrong with you? Don't ask me that question. And it might have to do that. It might have to do a little bit with you are who you are, so, but I mean, to be frank with you, I feel like I've put that to bed, and I can now speak from it from a place of kind of love and understanding and understanding what it taught me, right? So yeah, my dad was incredibly abusive. And when I say that, I don't mean like a spanking, that would have been, that actually would have been great. It was more of, he would do things around more sadistic things, like, I was drowned a few times, electrocuted a few times, stabbed, things of that nature, things that kind of really affect And, you know, when you're a kid, and it's funny, I mean, I'm 36 years old, but the past 2 years have been like so fundamental in my way of understanding humanity. You know, it's like I'm learning, I learned all over again. It's crazy. And, you know, one of those things, like as a child, you know, you're looking for safety, right? Like you want to feel safe, you know, you want to feel loved, and even as adults, right? Like we want safety, we want to feel significant to someone, want to feel loved, right? Approval, achievement, all those things. But as a kid, especially, like I had no safety in my life, you know? So I had to kind of check out, you know? And that's what I did when I was 8 years old. And on top of that, I had a really bad stutter. So I had all these like physical things come into my life through my relationship with him. And when I was 8, after a really bad situation, I told myself that I would no longer be a victim. And I had been a bad stutterer. So imagine going through all these things and not being able to say, stop, that hurts, or stop. You know, like I had no agency whatsoever, you know? And yeah, so when I was 8, I said, no more. I'm not going to be a victim, and I'm not going to become that person, you know? And the very next day, I stopped stuttering. I just stopped. But then I also stopped feeling things. And it's crazy because my mom would always be like, what happened to you? What happened to you? Like you used to be so like kind and smiling all the time, and this, that, and the other. And for a very long period of my life, all I did was just be stoic. Like I had no emotion at all. And, you know, so that's, those things were incredibly fundamental in like, in the way that were incredibly fundamental in shaping my understanding of just human relationship.
Well, it sounds like on the other hand, you had this beautiful, or, you know, at first glance, and it would be great if you could talk a little bit about this too, this relationship with your mom, where it sounds like you were kind and smiling and you were open with her. How did that dynamic play out with you, your mom, and your dad together being who they were and are?
Well, it changed. So, I mean, look, let me first start off by saying this. If I didn't have the mom that I did, that motherly love in my life, and she just poured it on me regardless and continues to pour it on me, you know, I might be a very different human being. I may be a sociopath. I don't know. You know, I may not even be around anymore, because even though when I was younger, I really didn't process this. Now that I'm older, I understand that her loves, the light that she shined through her love on me, kept me, you know, in the right general vicinity, you know? Because when I shut off, I shut her off too, you know? And it wasn't like I was mean to her or abusive anyway. I didn't do that. I just emotionally shut off to her, you know? And I kind of created this kind of sentinel character around her, where my responsibility was to protect her and to just be there for her. And the dynamic between the mother-son completely changed. And it became more of like me, the protector, trying to protect her. And for many years, I mean, again, up until a year ago, it was like that, right? So my conversations with her were very matter of fact. There wasn't like much like we didn't have a relationship.
And when you said that, you know, you shared that a part of you changed, and your stuttering stopped. Something shifted inside of you that you said, I'm not going to be a victim anymore, which is powerful, and also has at a very early age certain implications and certain feedback now from the world, that because you're building a character based on survival now, of not being a victim anymore. And how did this character get shaped from a very early age, and how did it affect your emotional response from this point in life on?
Yeah, I mean, I really felt nothing, you know. It wasn't so obvious to me when I was 9, 10, 11, right? Because I just didn't care. You know, I wouldn't consider myself a loner. I had friends, but I could disconnect from people like that, like no problem at all, and without any kind of repercussion. But then as I got older, specifically, it really started to come to a boiling point with my romantic relationships, you know, because that's where, you know, you start feeling love and you start wanting to give love and accept love and all these things. So when those elements came into my life, it was incredibly difficult for me to accept it. You know, once things got anything beyond just a fun, friendly relationship, you know, it's like, oh, it's just one of the guys that just so happens to have, you know, different parts, you know. Once it went beyond that, I just completely imploded, and I lived in this anxiety all the time, because I didn't know how to properly process that input.
What did that look like, that anxiety?
A lot of just nervousness around being, mostly it was nervousness as an unsure of how I should be performing, right? And what I should be sharing. Like, and how much of it was a communal, like not communal, but excuse me, how much of it was an us thing versus a me thing. Like I always kept a very clear boundary between the me and the us. You know, I never fully let anyone in to my life romantically, and it's still the case, right? I'm not actively with anyone, so I still haven't had the ability to have an us, like a true us.
It's an us right now.
Well, yeah, you know, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna speak to that because I feel when I experienced you, I believe it's already been 2 years now. There was a moment. The reason why I say emotional maturity is because there is a moment that I experienced you through a process that you found something that only you know what this was, and it was so evident. And every time I think about you, I feel this meeting between you and you. And would you mind speaking to that?
Yeah, I mean, you know, I started the process because I had a really bad breakup, you know, and completely my fault, and it had a lot to do with some of the elements we're talking about, right? Just self-imploding because I didn't know how to get and receive and give love, right? And whenever things would get too serious, I just imploded. And I had done that numerous times before. And I came to the point where it was just capitulation for me. It was just, I know this is not who I am, right? I'm living a version of myself that isn't true to who I know that I am. And this is not a version that I can love. Like I can't fall in love with this version because I'm always resentful of this version, and I'm always upset with this version, and I'm always like, I was really beating myself up for that, right? So that's how I began the process. And I was thinking it was all a me thing, right? Like everything was just, I was the villain, and I had gone through therapy and everything, and I would still continue to do these things. So I thought that I was just broken, you know? I thought that I was like this broken toy. And and then I started not justifying it, but then I started even thinking about, well, maybe, you know, there's light in the world. There has to be dark. Maybe you just represent dark, and that's just your function, you know? Like you're supposed to help other people get stronger so that they can go on and be happy. Like I started to believe that narrative, you know? So that's what got me into the process. And then as I started to kind of peel away the layers, I came to realize that it was something a long time ago, right? I thought I had put a lot of these elements of dad and everything to bed a long time ago. I would actually, you know, many years ago, I would make fun of people that had daddy issues. You know, I would, you know, to be frank. And now I look back on it, I'm like, God, I can't believe I did that. But, you know, I had to resolve those things. And that's when I finally understood that, and I let go, and I started to empathize, not just forgive my father for what happened, right? When I started to feel empathy and understand that he was fighting demons too, you know, like he was going through stuff that was affecting, and I just so happened to be collateral damage, right? Now that doesn't make it right, but he was going through stuff. And when that started to click for me, that's when I started to find tranquility. You know, that's when I started to kind of smile more and smile bigger and allow myself to have these kind of conversations with people. You know
what's interesting is something that you said is when you were going through that process, you knew that wasn't you, and you knew that it was hard for you. And this story that you had in your mind, how did you know? How did you know that this, you know, you shut off at 8, let's just put a year, let's say you're 28, 29 years old, and you know that who you are right now is not truly representative of who you know yourself to be, the true you. What was that identification process like? Did you just know? Did you have to go through anything to get to that realization? And what did you do once you got that realization?
I mean, it was a process for me to acknowledge that, but I knew it. You know it, or at least I did deep inside, because I was miserable. I was unhappy. I was overweight, not overweight, but I was heavier than I ever was. It was all these rocks that I was just toting, you know, and all this weight that I had on my back for years. And I would just stack more rocks, you know, and I would completely ignore it. And it got to a place where I disliked myself significantly, had no self-love. I hated everything that I was doing. I couldn't acknowledge any happiness around me. Any accomplishments that I achieved meant nothing, you know? And anything that anyone went out of their way to do for me, or any relationships, meant nothing. It just was never enough, you know? And it wasn't because I needed to achieve more. It wasn't that. It was that because I had this underlying issue. So I knew that it wasn't who I was, because how can you be this entity that's always unhappy and dark? You know, or when I know that once upon a time I was, and I was happy and I was getting abused. You know, I was getting drowned, but I was happy. You know, so I knew there was something there that was not, that I wasn't being true to self.
You know, what's really powerful in your actions, in connection with your realizations, is how at 8-year-olds, being an innocent child, just wanting to be loved, and receiving the complete opposite of that, or just, you know, dad being doing the best that he could to express, maybe that was his expression of love. Completely shutting that out, living life with this as an education about emotions, because this became the education about what love means to you, and what connection means to you. And then fast forward to how much of your life you've missed out, just for sake of pointing and calling it, labeling it something, missed out on connection and self-love and empathy and joy. And exactly that which pushed you away is what brought you back to be like, okay, dad, empathy for dad. Like, wow, like he must be going through a lot for him to be acting this way. Empathy, I forgive you. And it was through that you found your self-love. It's wild, right? And this is what a lot of people are afraid of, because they think it's like, well, just go towards the light. It's always good. This is true also. But when there are shadows and demons, for the sake of calling it something, there, we get to look at that so we can go through there to keep walking in the light, right?
Yuli,
Wow,
what inspired this? What inspired looking at this for the first? I understand it was the breakup. The breakup happened. You're feeling down, and probably sounds like it was your breaking point. Sounds like it was straw on the camel's back. What happened in that moment?
Yeah, it was just, you know, I was tired of losing. I was tired of pushing people that love me away. Like people that legitimately love me away. And let me tell you, man, I mean, some people are lucky to have one person in their life that cares about them, like really cares about them, romantically, or some people have no one. But I've been blessed that over the years, I've had many people really legitimately love me and care about me, and I push them away, and in many cases I hurt them significantly. I mean, significantly hurt people. And when I saw the pain that I caused and how far I had pushed people, that all they wanted to do was just love me. All they wanted to do was just kind of be there for me, be around me, be in my space, allow me into their light and be in my light. That's all they wanted to do. It was like it was a moment for me to be like, to really reflect and be like, okay, listen, man, what's going on here? Like, what's really going on? Why are you unhappy? Why are you pushing happiness away? Why are you making everyone around you unhappy? Like, why is that going on? That was kind of like the calculus that was going through my head. There was a lot of whys. Why this? Why that? Way? And I randomly walked into a meeting one Wednesday morning or Thursday morning, and Barry, who you all know, was there, and Barry has space issues, as you guys know, so he gets super close to me and he goes, I think I got something for you. And that was the beginning of it. I'm like, oh, okay, all right, well, thank you. So but yeah, it was a lot of that, man. I was done not accepting love in my life.
Going through the work that you did, and you've done now a lot of work, and it shows too. What are some things that you've learned that you could go back and tell Uli 10 years ago, or 20 years ago, or when you were 8 years old? What would you go back and tell him?
I mean, a lot of my lessons have been around empathy and compassion.
Yeah, but it's easy to label these, and people hear about these a lot. It's hard to live through it. It's hard to actually know what that's like, right? Mm-hmm. And you're the perfect example, because you didn't know, right? So how somebody out there, kid in your situation, like, still there's an 80-year-old or 10-year-old, 20-year-old, there's 70-year-old people who have never felt anything in their lives, right? What could you teach them based on what you know to be true, the path that you've gone through the fire so far?
Yeah. That sounds like a Pablo question to me, man. He is way deeper and way smarter than I am.
Pablo's got his own lessons. Pablo gives lessons this whole time, which is, we are blessed to have Pablo as our friend.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I mean, come on. Don't even get me started. I am a big Pablo fan. I mean, if we're talking about people that feel like or don't feel, right? Or don't feel like there's more beyond the sadness that they're feeling, I would say that there is. You know, stop. There is a story that I told myself that I believed, you know, and that and in some cases I kind of romanticized it, to be honest with you. It was like, oh, you're the tough guy from the you know, you grew up tough, you know, you survived that, and you were poor, you lived in a bad neighborhood where the cops wouldn't even go to after the sun went down, you know, like you've been galvanized, you know, like you are a badass, you can accomplish anything, you know, like that. And yeah, sure, I mean, that's part of my makeup, but like that created like this shield and armor around me that I thought to myself, well, okay, then nothing else could be difficult, you know. And so I shut off a lot of things that were tough or that were too emotional, because it was just, you know, beneath this romance or, you know, beneath this story that I was telling myself, you know. Like, how could you be weak about something that happened, you know, 30 years ago, Yuli? Like, what the hell's wrong with you, man? Like, sack up, you know. So what I would say is that stop telling yourself that story, you know. Flip the page, man. Like, what else is in the book, you know? What else is in the library, you know? Because I was stuck on that narrative, I was stuck on that story, and I had to pull myself out of it, pull the bookmark out, grab the book, you know, be like, thanks for everything you taught me, and literally, not literally but figuratively, throw that book out the window and allow myself to pick up another and grab a pen and start writing.
Beautiful. What's the new story?
Oh man, I'll tell you, man, I feel like I've got so much love in my life, both around me and to give, you know, in my own way. And you know, that's the one thing that I guess, if anyone that's listening that's like myself, right, like, having love to give doesn't mean that you have to turn into like this, you know, flower power person that's always like grabbing people and like sending like heart emojis all the time. And I mean, I do that a little bit, I'm not gonna lie, you know, but I'm being true to me, you know, I'm expressing love in the way that I express love, versus before I was not expressing love at all, you know. So whether me expressing love is immediately jumping on a Zoom call, you know, and being like, yes, I got you. I will have whatever you guys want. Or, you know, to get in my car and go deliver food to one of my friend's grandparents, you know, or like my way of expressing love is kind of like those acts, you know, like I will put myself in uncomfortable positions because I love you, you know. I'm being true to me in the way that I express that love. And in the past, I never was. I was never true in that way, you know?
And beautiful. Thank you. How has this now shifted the way life comes your way? Because I like to use the term, rather than goals or results, I like to use the word emanation. And when you have these realizations and you make these changes, you have this acceptance, this forgiveness, this empathy that turns now into this space of love and gratitude and giving and service. The world is giving you feedback. How is the world giving you feedback now, to giving this new you feedback?
You know, it's interesting, because before I specifically remember that I used to feel really sad, because like there was a healthy distance that my friends or acquaintances kept between me and them, you know. Like, I was the guy that you would call because you wanted to bounce ideas off of, you know, but I wasn't the guy you called because you were going through a difficult time. Or I wasn't the guy that you would call because you're getting married and you want me there to celebrate one of the most joyous times of your life, you know. So there was a healthy distance that my friends kept from me. And I thought it was because I just had douchey friends. And some of them were, I'm not going to lie. Some of them were. But I also came to realize that it was because I was creating this space, right? Because I wasn't being this genuine reflection of the things I wanted to say. So I had this expectation of, oh, you should be including me in your life because I love you, right? But I wasn't doing anything to kind of show them that I felt that way, for them to feel comfortable including me in their lives. You know, so now that I'm doing that, now that I'm, again, in my own way, showing myself that I care about these, all my friends and my family, this distance has gotten smaller and smaller, where now I can reach out and hug people, these people, you know, I can, I'm getting invited to weddings, you know. Yeah, legit. Like 2 days ago, I got, you know, being invited to it. I may even go to a bachelor party. I mean, technically I've gone to one other bachelor party, but I was like the last one on the list. Like, now I may be one of like the first ones on the list. That feels pretty amazing. You know, I've closed the gap, you know, and I feel better than I ever have because of it.
Beautiful, bro.
That is so, so wonderful. Thank you so much for that share. You know, you've also started something new in your career as well. Would love to hear a little bit about that as well, and what you're doing, and how has it been different now that, yeah, I know that you've, you know, done led development teams in the past, and that's something that you've had experience in as well. But how is that different in your work now, and something that you're putting a lot of energy into on a daily basis?
Yeah. So the whole DNA of the company is based off vulnerability. Like, I had a conversation the first day with my co-founders, and I'm very, very blessed to have really awesome co-founders. You know, not just because they're talented and smart. I mean, that's what all your co-founders should be, you know, but they're good people, you know, like good people that want to do good things. You know, and that's what I want to do. Like, I want to do good. I want to build awesome stuff, but I also want to do good things, right? And look, if you're going about things the right way, everything else kind of falls in place, you know. And so from day one, I was like, all right, we're having a meeting and we're going to get vulnerable. This is going to be really uncomfortable, you know. And, you know, we're talking about guys who, you know, one of them just turned 40, and, you know, sometimes it's harder to change you when you're a little older. And this is a guy that, specifically, you know, one of my partners I'm thinking about, you know, God bless him. He was like, in the beginning, he was like, I don't know about this. Like, I don't know how much I should be sharing right now. And we did a whole weekend, man. And it was all about just getting comfortable with the uncomfortable, you know, getting comfortable with that. What's it called? You know, the 16-inch journey or 18-inch journey, you know, just like really going in here, like, don't tell me how you're doing. Tell me, you know, what is it? You know, how's your heart, right? How's your heart today? So the DNA is completely built off that, man. It's.
Can you tell people what you do, Yuli?
Excuse me?
Can you tell people what you do?
Yeah, of course. So the new company we're working on. So for 20 years, I've been building, acquiring, and failing and succeeding in some cases in technology. So just, you know, technology companies. And the latest venture is called PTO Genius. And what we're doing is we're helping empower people to do more with their paid time off, right? Traditionally in the US, because of all sorts of different reasons, people don't use all their paid time off, which is a big, I mean, it's a waste. Like, I mean, we should be recharging. We should be, you know, putting work down for a second and connecting, you know, with family and with loved ones, you know. And it just so happens that this is one of those kind of fortuitous things where on the company side as well, they want you to take that time, you know. Now, your manager may be a different story, but from the company's perspective, they want you to take that time because, and I don't want to get too businessy here, but that time is accounted for as a liability in the balance sheets, you know? So you don't want too much of that to be sitting on the balance sheets because it artificially drives down the value of the company.
Absolutely.
So what we're doing is we're saying, how can we encourage you to actually use all your paid time off? And that's whether we're surfacing opportunities for you to get away and to do things that you might have otherwise thought you might have not been able to do, right? Or to say, listen, maybe you can't get away, but maybe you can take that time, convert it into cash, and put it down, put it into your kids' college savings.
Yeah.
Or to, so we're helping people do more with that. And kind of like the big 40,000 fuzzy, nice and warm goal is one day, right? If we can get the Fortune 50 to get their employees to just take one additional day of paid time off. That's it, like just one additional day. And I know the Fortune 50, Fortune 50, we're talking about big logos here, but if we can just get them to take one additional day, it makes a huge impact, not just on the individual, but on just the general, U.S. economy. We're talking about, billions of dollars in economic stimulus, right?
That's awesome. Which
helps people all across the board. So that's kind of what we're working on now. And again, but it all started with a conversation around what's the one thing that made you the most uncomfortable? Beautiful. What are you afraid of the most? What's been your most traumatizing experience? What's like, it all started with those conversations.
And how has that been different? I know, Pablo, sorry, you have a question too. Just quick, something I would love to understand. We've had a few speakers on here. Rob has been on here. Bernie has been on here. And they've talked about their experiences before they went through this deep work before they went through the fire. And starting a business is its own, own undertaking. What is different now when you started this after the work that you've done, and versus what has been done before? And what has been the pros and cons that you've seen in each side?
Yeah, so what's different is that this time around, since we're starting with vulnerability at the center, it allows us to, because as you guys know, when you get into the realm of building a business, there's going to come a point where there's disagreements. This just happens, and but if you understand the lens that everyone else is kind of looking at the same problem through, you start to understand that, hey, maybe this guy sees it in this way, not because add whatever negative reason you want here, right? But because they've lived this kind of life. So they're seeing things in this certain way, and we've already experienced some of those things. And it's been helpful to be like, oh, okay, well, I know this person has this kind of trauma. So he's just kind of reacting in a way that's relative to that place that he's coming from, right? So it's made it a lot easier for us to have those difficult conversations and be able to get to a place where we've got buy-in. And buy-in doesn't mean let me convince you to think the way that I'm thinking. Buy-in is, you know what, I'm willing to take that ride with you. Like I'm maybe we're wrong here, but I'm willing to trust in that. It's made that process a lot easier versus in the past where it was just try to impose your will, like, and that's not the kind of organization that I'm trying to build. This is from the heart.
It's really powerful to start from this point zero, from a place of vulnerability. The tendency based on research for men is not wanting to feel weak, and therefore we want to fix everything. And we think that we need to have an answer as to, well, how we're going to do it better. And sometimes it's learning how to just hold space. And this may sound woo-woo for, high-level executive, low-level executive, but how do you hold space when someone's like, I'm really having a hard time. I'm failing at meeting these deadlines. I'm uncomfortable. I've been arguing with my wife, and I'm not 100% at work. and for another man or another person to just hold space and not try to fix that, right? Not try to be like, well, you got to do this, this, and this, and then try this. And it's like, just listen, be like, wow, I hear you. I value, thank you for sharing. And this is enough, right? And this is typically what women complain about. You're not listening to me, right? Are you in there? Just hear me out. I don't want you to say anything. Just hear me out, right? What I love about the what came up for me when you were talking about the paid time off and taking that time off, I remember when I was in law, we had sick days and then we had vacation days. So I would wake up some mornings and I'm like, well, I'm not taking a vacation and I don't feel sick. So how do I call this one in? And I'll just be honest and call in and be like, hey, I'm feeling great today. However, I'm going to take a sick day off, but I'm feeling wonderful. I'm going to go to the beach. And it was this like surprise, like, whoa, you should hold off on taking a healthy day off until you're sick. And it's like, well, I don't want to take a day off and feel like crap in my bed. I'll take care of that accordingly. But what about healthy days off, right? And sick days off and vacation time off, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of value that, and some companies are starting to get it. There's a lot of value around exactly what you're saying, taking time for you, and whatever that means. You want to go to the beach, but like really reconnecting with yourself. And it pays dividends because you come back feeling refreshed, you come back and because you come back happier, and you end up accomplishing more. You think clear. If you're an information worker that your whole job depends on your ability to strategize and think and figure problems out, you want to make sure that up here you're good and in here you're feeling great. So more and more companies are starting to get that, not at the rate that we all hope, but they are starting to get that. Regarding the whole like listening and not fixing thing, it's what came up to me when you were talking about that was a long time ago I watched a movie called A White Man Can't Jump. I'm sure you guys and there's a famous scene where Rosie Perez is telling, I think it's Woody Harrelson in that movie, right? Yeah. She's like, I'm thirsty, and they have this little kind of back and forth where she's telling him that she's thirsty. And he's like, all right, well, I'm going to go get you a glass of water. And she goes, no, I don't want you to get me a glass of water. And that scene, I kid you not, never made sense to me. Like I was like, what he got her a glass of water. Like, why is she so mad? Brother, I was watching that, like it just randomly came on, I think like a year ago or like 8 months ago. And I saw it and I was like, I get it. I was like, oh my God, I totally get it. Like, how did I not see that before? And you're right, it's because like our natural way, like our natural role, position, or at least is, okay, I'll fix it. Let me grab my hammer and let me fix it, So I think we're in a place just like from a masculinity perspective where, more and more men are becoming interested in that. All right, well, how do I connect with this? Because people need me for more than just fixing.
Actually, there's one more thing that really comes up for me when I think of you is there's a moment where you were being supported by lots of people. There were just people around you, holding you, caressing your hair, singing you songs. And there was just a lot of that support. It was a beautiful moment, such a beautiful moment that came about.
Are you really going to bring that up? Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm just joking. Yeah, no, it was.
There's so much value. Whatever you went through, whatever tough exterior, tough interior that you demonstrated, and you've mentioned this too, there's been support that has come into your life. And I feel like a lot of people get this opportunity, but a lot of people can't accept that support.
Yeah.
How did you accept
that? In that specific instance, or just in general?
In general, like every day, the support of your co-founders who were vulnerable in front of you, the support of your people, this initiative to help give PTO out there, there's a lot of support that you're giving and receiving. The giving part is easy, as most men know. The giving support, as you've mentioned, let me go try and fix it, is easy. How do you accept that?
Yeah, I think Pablo put it well. I learned that I don't have to have all the answers, or I don't need to. It's not, there's no weakness in vulnerability, you know? I thought it was super weak for people to be vulnerable. Like, oh, are you kidding me? And then I came to realize that vulnerability it takes incredible courage. It takes incredible courage to sit here and say, you know, I've went through this and I felt that, and I don't know the answer. I don't, or, you know, it takes a lot of courage to do that. And that's just the first phase of finding the answer or the strength that you need, right? And that was kind of the aha moment for me, you know, that allowed me to kind of let people carry me when I'm weak. And some of the experiences that I went through, I was physically weak in many instances, and other people were strong when I needed them to be, and I allowed them to, and because of that, we moved forward together. You know, alone you can go places fast, but together you can go places way further. And I had to learn that.
It's very well said. Thank you.
Mm.
How has this climate, this coronavirus, impacted you, your business, your personal, your emotional growth? How has that impacted in your life?
Well, personally, I think it's been, and it's weird to say this because we're talking about a pandemic, but it's been good personally because it's slowed people down. You know, it's slowed down friends who are not kind of living this journey or starting, or maybe are starting to kind of dip their toe in. It slowed them down a little bit, where now they're like, I got no choice but to kind of speak with my friends.
Mm.
You know, it's like, I don't have the excuse of, oh, I'm stressed because I got to go into the office all the time. No, you've got a little bit of time.
I got to invite Yuli to the bachelor party now.
Yeah, exactly. Now you're not going to get away with it. You know,
Right.
so I've been able to have Zoom, you know, calls just like this, and connect with people deeply. You know, so personally, I think it's been great. Professionally, you know, people are just afraid, and no one's buying right now, but it's okay because it gives me an opportunity to have conversations around that, right? Well, let's talk about the things that you're afraid of, and how is it that we fall within that, and if we don't, that's okay. But let's better understand what you're going through and your makeup, you know. And we've been able to build some real good relationships with people, and maybe they turn into clients and maybe they don't, but it's okay because we're learning, right? So.
And how has your spiritual, emotional, mental growth been during this time? How has that been impacted? And what are you doing to stay where you are or move forward? Or what are some practices that you're doing that help you?
I talk a lot to myself. I really do. I really do. So I call them, I've got a name for it. Maybe I might have overheard it somewhere. I call them one-on-ones, you know? And what I do, because what would happen, man, is that I would, like, I was a thinker, and I would have like an idea play in my head, a problem or something that I was stressing about, play over and over like a broken record. And I would get no kind of, like, no resolution at all. So what I started doing is said, oh, all right, well, let me just talk. Let me pretend like I'm here with Pablo, or I'm here, you know, with Chandeep, and we're just talking to each other. We're just rapping, you know. And so I sit there and I do this for like 5 to 10 minutes, you know. If I'm really going through some stuff, maybe it's 15. And I'm like, hey, so what's up, brother? What's going on? What are you feeling? And I go, and well, man, I don't know. You know, I'm feeling a little doubtful about XYZ. You know, I'm really starting to get concerned about this. well, why are you concerned? Tell me more about that. And I'm just going back, and sometimes it's crazy, but sometimes I even make myself laugh. You know? But it's like my way of kind of reconnecting with what I'm feeling, you know? And I get to a place where there's resolution. Instead of just like doing that broken record up here and stressing myself out and never getting resolution.
Right. I love that. I love that, because we think that the only crazy part about this sharing is that it's talking to ourselves out loud. That sounds crazy. But when we realize that there's an egoic character playing a role, and there's a true self, and there's a true character, there's an essence to us, and we can see them and speak to ourselves in this way, we really get to A, laugh at ourselves. It's like, I can't believe I'm doing this. And B, it's like, well, who's the one really asking the question, and who's the one answering, and where is this coming from? Right? Because we sometimes fall in that loop of just character, and it's the character, the strong ego is constantly reacting and acting based on memory and perception of what's happening. And then there's a true part of ourself that's like, well, when you're done playing this role, let's get real. And this is the challenge. And I feel this is the practice, at least in my personal and self-realization, self-contemplation practice, is this. It's no different than meditation, right? There's no different than putting playing a meditation on your phone or on your computer than hearing yourself teach yourself how to meditate, right?
Yeah.
It's wonderful, and it's a lot cheaper than getting a coach. Right?
Yeah, and you know, what I came to find out is, you know, it's what resonates with you, right? I meditate every once in a while, but I can't be one of those people that, you know, meditates all the time, especially when I'm going through real stressful things, because my mind won't shut off. It starts playing that broken record, you know? So I find that my meditation practice is strongest to kind of take me to the next level when I'm happy. Like, it elevates me when I'm in a good place. When I'm in a bad place, I need to come down to brass tacks and have that one-on-one with myself and say, okay, what's going on, brother? Like, you know.
And this is a form of meditation. This is a form of meditation.
That's what I'm going to tell myself next time.
I recently wrote this article on Medium, Who Thinks for the Thinker. And it came from this inspiration. I was reading this book by J. Krishnamurti, and what he said, and I know Pablo's a big believer in J. Krish as well. So one of the things that came up, and it's an interesting question that comes up for me, Yuli, when you talk about these you talking to yourself. He talks about when you're investigating yourself, there's a part of you that comes out and is investigating the other parts of you. So there's this division that comes through by doing that. But it sounds like you're doing something else where you're in your whole being and you're still able to have a different persona, but still being whole in that manner. And that's very beautiful, that share that comes out. You're going through the process of inquiry, of investigation, but you're doing it in a way that keeps yourself whole and not divided. And I've never heard that before. And this is just a beautiful share. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no, thank you guys.
And what's most important is that you're doing it. This is the hardest part, right? Because sometimes we don't know how to do any of these things, and we are invited to participate in different modalities, and they're either sometimes too esoteric or too woo-woo, or they just don't fit what our character needs in order to grasp concepts, to use them as tools and techniques so they work. One thing that really stood out for me in your sharing is how you learn. You say, I love and I share love my way. And coming from a place where our first school of education is our parents, our guardians, and where we grew up, and then our school, and then society, and then relationships. And coming from this school of growing up in a certain way in connection to your dad, how do you then find this way of loving that is your way, and even say, this is my way of loving, when you haven't been educated on how that way is?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. You know, before I jump into that though, I do want to hit one point, because when you talked about like woo woo and all that stuff, and that resonates with me a lot, because that's who I was. Meaning, not I wasn't woo, I was the guy that was like freaking hippies. Like I was that guy, you know. Like
I'm still that guy. Fuck yoga.
Pablo looks at himself every morning in the mirror,
Yeah,
just like
he's like, goddamn hippie. Yeah, I was that guy. I was just like, you can't fix it, just spit on it. You know, I was very judgy in that way, and because of that, I missed out on a lot of opportunities to find what works for me, like what recipe works for me. You know, because I was so kind of myopic in my acceptance of other ways. You know, and when I started to break down those walls, I started to understand, well, you know, we all experience things differently, and some people are highly spiritual, some people are not. I'm not highly spiritual, but I mean, I do believe in higher beings and all, a higher power. But with me, it came down to how is this helping me heal? How is this helping the kind of re-education of me? You know, instead of the veneer of everything that we see. You know, oh, the things that they're chanting, or the this or the that, or, you know, that guy doesn't look like he's showered, like all that stuff that like these things that we tell ourselves, right? That's irrelevant. So I mean, if anyone is struggling with, there's always, when I you know, do things, there's always a guy that's like me 2 years ago. He's looking around, he's like, why are people hugging? Why are you looking at me? Like, that was me. I was like, why are you hugging me, man? Like, just understand that there are other ways, and maybe you just haven't found that. Maybe you're a hugger.
Can
I'm a hugger now.
Can we just eye gaze for the next 4 minutes until it gets really uncomfortable?
Oh, that was probably the worst one for me in the very beginning.
Is for me.
A little, right? Yeah, it's still a little. There's like a lot of deep soul connection there. So.
One of my memories of Yuli is we're both in the journey, and I'm like, Yuli, I love you, man, and Yuli's like, go away.
Yeah, he was having this tender moment. Chandeep is like having this tender moment. He goes, I love you, and I just go, all right, leave me alone. But it was just it wasn't because I didn't feel it. It was just because in the moment I was in a different space, and
for sure,
kind of going through some stuff. But I hope with that kind of, like, what these stories kind of tell to people, or the narrative that it paints, is that, you know, you don't have to be a certain or fit a certain kind of cookie cutter role to find a version of yourself that you love, you know. Or maybe love is too much of a fluffy word for you. Whatever, a version of yourself that you're very happy with, you know. Like, I think that's the takeaway, because I know that's who I was before. A lot of these things kind of pulled me away. And I know some people that I know that are kind of, you know, just kind of shy away from anything that has love or spiritual or anything in it. But there's so much more there. You just kind of have to find the recipe that works for you.
Anything else you want to add for our viewers before we close this off, Yuli?
I mean, I think it's really just that, right? Just allowing yourself, and, you know, we use the word surrender a lot, right? And again, whatever vocabulary resonates with you is fine by me, but just allow yourself the ability to find that happiness, you know? And being myopic about your options is going to make it more difficult to do that, right? So that's my experience. Just open up a little bit, and you may find that there's answers for you there.
Beautiful.
And talk to Pablo and Chandeep all the time.
Yeah.
All right,
Love